Hello everyone, it's Jessica. Welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. Today's video is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll link it up here. But in this video, we're using some leftovers from that project. And at the very end, I'll have examples of these cards as like birthday cards so you can see how versatile the theme really is. So this is just a piece of pattern paper that's 5¼ by 4, and then I have that leftover heart. And this is a scrap piece of pattern paper that's about 1¼ by 6. And this is the general layout of the card. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to show you also, I'm using this Scripty Saying stamp set again from Lawn Fawn. I just love this thing. It's super versatile. And since I'm only going to stamp 1 or 2 sentiments today, I'm just using my acrylic block. It doesn't seem worth the hassle of like positioning that stamp just to stamp it once or twice. So I'm just inking it up with black ink. I thought about using a different color, but I was like, nope, we're just going to keep it simple today and use the black. And I am just stamping it down onto a scrap of white cardstock. You just need something big enough to fit whatever sentiment it is that you're going to use. For the focal point on this card, we are again using this stamp set from Mama Elephant. I just think these teddy bears are like so adorable. I can't stop using them. So here I have my card base. It is an A2 top folding card base made from 110-pound cardstock. And the first thing I'm going to do is adhere my card panel or my pattern paper panel down. I probably should have waited to do this because I needed to cut that skinnier scrap of pattern paper, but I wasn't really thinking. I was just kind of going with the flow. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. Sometimes when I make cards, I'm like not thinking them out ahead. I'm just kind of going and seeing what I can do. But no worries there. I just went ahead and used my trimmer to cut that down to 5¼ so it is the same length as my pink mat. And then I'll just go ahead and adhere that down. Now, one of the things I liked about all of these cards is that though I did use those little stamps that I colored in, really the sky is the limit for what you could use. Ephemera, if you have stickers, like you guys know I'm addicted to the Dollar Tree stickers. If you have those, you could totally use those. I mean, just make use of whatever you have in your stash. That's really the goal of these cards. So here now I'm just kind of figuring out where I want my sentiment to go and how I want it to fit on the card with the heart. And I just marked off where I need to cut down that strip so that it fits on the card. So just go ahead and cut that down. And then I decided I want to pop up all of these elements. So I put foam tape on the back of the sentiment and then I'll go ahead and adhere it down. Nice and simple. And when I lift up my cards like that, it's because when I look at the card kind of right in front of me, it's easier for me to see if something is lined up or not. So sometimes you'll see me take the card off screen, and that's why usually I'm just trying to make sure things are lined up correctly. So you can see there, I also popped foam tape on the back of my heart. I left a little gap where it was going to overlap the sentiment strip so that it wouldn't be like too high up there where you'd have like 2 layers of foam tape. I didn't want that, so I made sure to leave a gap on the back of the heart. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pop up these cute little teddy bears. And you see, these could be really quick cards. Like if you wanted to batch produce some cards, I think this is a really good layout for it because none of the elements are really too difficult or too complicated. The hardest part is cutting out the heart, but even that doesn't really take too much time. So that's the front of this card, but we still need to do the inside. Now, my go-to is usually just to put a piece of pattern paper on the inside of the card, but for this one, I decided I wanted to stretch myself and mix it up a little. So I just looked through some stamp sets until I found 2 hearts, and I pulled out some inks, just different shades of pink to coordinate with the papers I'm using. I think these inks are Concord and Ninth Ballet Slipper. That was the first one. This one here is Honeysuckle. And the darkest ink I'm using is Poppy, which just is a nice bright red. So I'm just twisting and turning these hearts and kind of stamping them all over the bottom right corner of this little cardstock panel. And that panel is just 4 by 5¼ so it'll mat nicely on the inside of our card. And once I was done kind of stamping it, I just adhered it to the inside of the card. Again, if you didn't want to do all that work, you could totally use a scrap of pattern paper like you've seen me do in other videos. And that completes the first card, right? Quick, and easy. So now moving on to the second card, we have that purple leftover heart, and this is the same embossing folder I used in the last video, but it wasn't big enough to fully emboss my piece of cardstock, so I ran it through twice, first on one side and then on the other, just so that it would, the embossed pattern would completely fit on the background of the card. Now for the strip on this card, I needed to make something. So what I decided to do was just emboss those same hearts that I stamped with earlier. I decided it would look really cool if I embossed it on, heat embossed it on some vellum with some like gold champagne embossing powder. So that's what I'm doing. I have a scrap piece of vellum that I am just stamping those hearts with Versamark sticky ink. You can use any sticky ink. And then I'm covering them with some embossing powder. This is, I believe, champagne. It's a Recollections color from Michaels. I put my powder over it. I didn't heat emboss it yet, but I went back and wherever there were gaps, I just added more embossing, more hearts and embossing powder so that they'd be kind of filled in. Now you can see two of those hearts I didn't stamp very well, and I'm going to show you how I fix that in a second. So I heated those up off camera, and now those two hearts, I'm just going to stamp again right over top, just doing my best to line them up. If it's not perfect, that's okay. These are handmade cards, but you can see there I just added more powder to them. I'm just kind of using a dry paintbrush to flick away some powder that's where I don't want it to be. And then look, I heated those up and you can see no one's going to know that I didn't stamp them right the first time. Now to fill in those smaller gaps, I'm just doing the same thing with the smaller heart, stamping it all over the vellum, and then I will emboss those, and that is the strip we get. And I think those are so pretty. So at this point, I need to cut this down. So I just put it in my trimmer and cut it down to like the bottom edge of the hearts, which is about 2 1/4. Again here, or 1 1/4, sorry, the size doesn't matter. And I decided I wanted to trim that down a little bit more still. So I'm trimming that down to 1.5 inches. And I'm going to save that little scrap piece because you guys know me. If I can use scrap somewhere else in the card, I'm going to try to do it. Okay, so now I have most of my pieces. I'm going to start working on assembly. So I have this black embossed panel, but it is a little too big. I want it to have a border on the card, so I'm just going to trim it down to 4 by 5 1/4. For this panel, by the way, I use the Concord and Ninth black cardstock. And for the card base that you can see I have there, it's just an A2 110-pound black card base. I use paper from Recollections. You can buy it at Michaels, and they go together pretty well. Okay, so now I'm just laying everything out and making sure I like the way all of these elements look together. And for the most part, I like it, although you will see in a little bit, I changed my mind about the sentiment. I just wanted to show you there the glossy accents on that cute little teddy bear. But I think it mostly looks good. Like I said, I decided I didn't love the white sentiment with black ink, so I'll change that in a second and you'll see. But first, I'm going to add my vellum to my cardstock. My favorite way to do this is to add dry adhesive to the back of my panel and then just wrap my vellum around it. This way I don't have to worry about glue oozing everywhere and showing through my vellum. So whenever I can adhere vellum this way, it's generally how I like to do it. And it's pretty simple too. So I just wrapped it around and that looks good. So now we're just going to adhere this to our card base. But what I was saying before about the sentiment, guys, I thought the white just looked a little too stark against the like very black card. So what I ended up doing was I white embossed the sentiment onto a scrap of black cardstock. I'm going to show you that in a second, but I thought it worked a lot better with the card. See what I mean? I thought it just went a lot better. So now I'm just going to pop that up on some foam tape and add it to my card. So once I have the sentiment adhered down, next I'm going to move to popping up the heart. And you see there how the heart overlaps the sentiment strip a little. I want to make sure I don't put foam tape there so that it doesn't get doubled up and like create a little bulge there. So that's why I left the gap on the back of the heart. Okay, so with the heart down, the last thing to do is pop up our dapper little teddy bear, and then that's going to complete the front of the card. And if you're looking at this card and you're thinking this really isn't my style, like I don't like all the black, I don't like the purple, that is totally fine. The beauty of card making is that we each get to express our unique individuality. So you could do whatever you want. Maybe you want to do rainbow. Oh, actually, rainbow would be really cute. Like maybe if you did your hearts out of like rainbow stripes or something. I don't know, but you can do whatever makes you happy when you make your cards. Okay, so moving on to the inside of this card, I have a scrap of the alcohol inked paper and also a scrap of the hearts. And I decided to go with the hearts for this card. So I'm going to adhere them to this panel the same way I did on the front of the card. Oh, actually, no, I'm adding glue. I don't know why I added glue here. But there you have it. I did. You wouldn't have to. I'm not sure why I did. But I'll just adhere that to my panel and attach it to the inside of the card. Once again, this panel is 4 by 5 1/4, so it'll mat nicely on the inside of our card. Now, if you're using a white card base or some other light colored card base, you don't have to put a mat on the inside of your cards. I generally like to, but you don't have to. However, if you are using a dark card base like I am here today, I would encourage you to put a white mat on the inside of your card just so that it's easier to write your message. And if you have a bunch of gel pens and you like to write messages with gel pens, that's not an issue. But especially if you're going to like gift this card to someone else to use or you're going to sell it, definitely make sure you put a white panel inside your card. Okay, so that finishes off our card, and here are the 2 cards that I made. You can see kind of later on after I made this video, I decided to go back and add some gems to the front of this card. I kind of liked it more without them, but hey, you, do what makes you happy. Those are our 2 cards. Now I'm also going to bring in and show you the original cards so you can see how we used the positive and negative of the pieces for our hearts on our card. See? So one piece had the negative and the other piece had the positive with the heart. Same with our 2 black cards. Now I had so much fun with these, I decided I wanted to make more cards. So what I'm going to show you now is birthday cards that I made using these same layouts simply by changing the shapes I cut out and the pattern paper I used. I decided to make birthday cards because I always need more of them in my shop, and all of these cards are up in my shop now. So for these cards, I used the Recollections Happy Cake Day paper pad. You've seen me use it before. It's a great paper pad for birthday cards. And for these cards, for these first 2 cards, I cut out a scalloped circle. That's a pretty basic shape that a lot of us have. And you can see for this one, I didn't use any embossed paper. I just used pattern paper, and it works really nicely. Now that little dog on the front of the card is from a Dollar Tree sticker. I thought it actually coordinated really well with the paper, so that worked out nicely. For this second card, I did use an embossing folder to do the background. I used the dog from the Dollar Tree sticker set, and for that cupcake, I just fussy cut that from the pattern paper that I used. So you have a lot of options. You can stamp something down, you can use a sticker, you can fussy cut from pattern paper. Whatever you have in your stash, there is a way to make it work with these cards. For my next 2 cards, I cut out a square. I did not color the image that I stamped down. That birthday cake, I thought it looked really nice on just plain black and white with this card. So if you don't like to color images when you stamp them, you don't have to for these cards. Whatever your card making style is, you can make it work with these. Now, for the coordinating envelopes, what I like to do is stamp a sentiment on the back flap and an image that coordinates on the front. For this one, I used those teddy bears again. I told y'all I'm addicted to those right now. They're just so adorable and fun to use. And with this card, I want to show you that if you are using a stamped image, a really simple way to make a coordinating envelope is to stamp that same image on your envelope, and boom, just like that, while you already have that supply out, now you have a coordinating envelope for your card. Now these last 2 cards are probably my favorite, and for them, I just used a simple circle die. I did color in that goat that you see, which was a lot of fun. I think that goat is just so fun and silly. And you'll see the sentiment I used on these ones is smaller than what I used on my original card. And that's okay. They don't have to be exactly the same. Think of the layout as just a guide to use when you're using the supplies that you have in your stash. And again, to make the coordinating envelope, I just stamped that same goat on the front of the card. Now this last card is probably my absolute favorite one, but that just might be because I am partial to the color yellow. Anyways, like I said before, all of these cards are up in my shop now, and I will have the link to my card shop in the description box below this video. I hope seeing all of these cards with different pattern papers and different shapes and different stamp sets encourages you to use whatever it is that you have in your stash. If this video does inspire you to get, creative in your craft room, I would love to see what you make. Please tag me over on Instagram and whatever cards that you make using these layouts. I will have my Instagram handle in the description box below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.